Thank you, Tony. Thanks, Neil. Pleasure to be here. How is everybody? You good? Are you ready? I saw some of you went pretty hard last night. I'm on the WhatsApp group with the cool kids or whatever, and some of you are probably going to have a pretty rough morning. So hopefully I can ease that up a little bit. So well, welcome. I get this question a lot when I go to a conference like this. I have a slide up here. You might want to put it up. People come and they ask me, we say, "Hi, how you doing? Good to see you." And they say this question. They say, "What do you do?" Well, what do you do? So my answer, well, I'm Phillip. And I'm not really quite sure what I do anymore. I do a lot of things. I don't know what my title is. Technically, I work for a company called Something Digital. It's very technical these days. Where I'm an e-commerce evangelist, so that's a role that I play. I talk about e-commerce and how it can transform your company or how it can transform your interactions with your customers. I work for Something Digital. That's a thing that I do. But I also host a apparently prolific podcast. Thank you, Tony, for that. I don't think it's very prolific because most of the time we're just rambling on about whatever comes to mind. Sometimes we weave Magento into it, which is nice. But we started a podcast 4 years ago called Mage Talk, so I co-host a podcast. That's something I do. And about 2 years ago, I started another podcast called Future Commerce, where we decided, myself and my co-host Brian, we thought, let's kind of get a little more broad. Let's get up out of the world of Magento and, in fact, not even really talk about e-commerce so much as what does commerce look like, what does retail look like in the next 5 years. And so I like to call myself a pragmatic retail futurist. And you have to use really big air quotes when you say stuff like that because it's kind of douchey, right? So that's a thing I do. I co-host a couple podcasts, so that's a thing I do. And so when about a year ago, when I stood on this stage last time, I thought there's only so much of one person that can go around at one time, right? And I realized some time ago that I'm actually doing too many things. I'm one of those people who I like to say yes to every opportunity that comes my way. And part of that is FOMO. Does anyone know what FOMO is? Fear of missing out. I have this inherent fear that I'm going to miss out on something great. And sometimes saying yes to things helps you because you wind up creating things like podcasts that become pretty well known in our space. And sometimes those things begin to hinder you. So I started to dwindle some things down. If you were here last year, you'll remember that I stood on this platform and I announced that I would be stepping down as a moderator of Magento Stack Exchange. And it was a great honor to have held that position for a couple years. But I remember standing here and confessing to most of you in this room that after some time of doing that, it began to feel like a trophy. And this thing that I said yes to, I started to sort of regret. And that the community couldn't actually live on and become healthier with someone like me in that position, that somebody else needed to take the reins. So when I looked at this podcast here, I thought, these are the kinds of things that I do want to do. So I had to say no to some things to be able to say a firm yes to others. So it was, now I'm making a conscious decision. What do you want to be? Who do you want to be? What do you want to do? And so when I looked at this podcast, I said, does this podcast represent everything I want this podcast to be? And I had to sort of say, no, it doesn't. It doesn't really represent visually what the content is of it. So we embarked on this rebrand. So back in January of this year, I said, I want to reimagine what this brand looks like. And I didn't realize that when we started the process of this rebrand that it would actually kick off a series of events to actually make me question everything that I know and everything that I hold dear. What we actually wound up with was something closer to this. This is the sneak peek. Don't tweet this because it's not live yet. But this is the sneak peek of what actually was the culmination of many months of a rebrand exercise to cause us to actually have to ask ourselves what embodies what future commerce looks like. And the process that we took to get there, we needed some help We needed a professional to tell us and take us down a journey to say, this is how you think about accomplishing a rebrand, because we'd never done that before. We could certainly figure it out, but what happens when you let me do something is you come up with a rocket ship and a bunch of lowercase text. What happens when you let people who are experts at what they do take the reins and guide you down a path? They take you to a place that you couldn't have gotten to on your own, right? So I'm so happy with what happened, because this actually represents what I want to be, which is a visionary, which is to point people towards not some spacey future where our brains are in jars and we're all, meta beings, but something that's actually tangible and something we can grasp and something that can resonate with the audience we're trying to connect with. So how did we get there? We actually took a pretty long path on our journey to get to this rebrand. And one of those paths that we went down was we started, the brand agency took us through a process of mythology and sort of understanding, well, what is commerce? What is speed? And so we talked about Hermes or Mage, right? And we talked about the Roman gods and the Greek gods. And I really liked this tangent that we were on. And it came to pass that we found a Roman god that actually sort of embodied a lot of what we wanted to be. Does anyone know who this is? Yeah, Janus or Janus, right? And it's amazing. This is the Roman god of transition. And I, myself, have been going through a lot of transition. And this really spoke to me. Because at once, this person is the old man looking back on who he used to be, and the new man looking forward to say, who do I want to be in the future? Everything up to this point is embodied in his past self, and everything that could possibly be in the future is what he has to look forward to. He cannot change everything that's happened to this point, but there is infinite possibility for what lies ahead. And gosh, if I don't know what that's like. 20 months ago, I was 334 pounds. And I came to a transition point. It was in January of 2017. January is where the god Janus, that's where we get the word January, this transition from the old to the new. And it resonated with me, this story, this idea that we are at once both a portion of our old self and our new self. And that at any moment in time, we are making a transition from who we are, or who we used to be, to who we want to become. And so I started to think to myself, what are some things that I could carve out to make myself look more like the person I want to be? Now, this is a physical representation. You can see the effects, right, of making some of those decisions. This is one of those decisions I made. I decided that I'd rather be the person on the right than the person on the left. Now, that's just me. Many of you make better choices than I do, I'm sure. But I am given to excess. And so I stand here today. I'm 20 months sober. Pretty excited about that. And thank you. And it takes a daily recommitment for me to try to be the guy on the right. That doesn't mean I do it well every day, right? I make mistakes along the way. We all make mistakes. But you have to daily recommit yourself to decide that you're going to make the right choice. And so this talk, actually, this morning, is the result of a very dear person who gave me this book. And this book sat on my shelf for 2 years before I decided to pick it up and read it. And this book, Essentialism, is a business book that's essentially about the world of possibility of the yeses, but really the biggest power that you have in your life is to be able to say no. For you to be able to say, what is my purpose? What is my mission? And does this opportunity that I'm presented with today fit that mission and that purpose for my life? So, the most successful businesses in this world have very specific and targeted mission statements. And so I believe that the most successful people in this world have the same. If you know what your mission is for your life, it is very easy for you to then ask that back to yourself as a question to say, is this opportunity in front of me on mission for who I am or who I want to be? So you have to ask yourself today, what is your mission? What is your mission today? I would hope that you walk into a room like this today prepared and ready for the things that you learn in this room this morning to help you accomplish your mission, right? And it's not just about what you do, because that was how I started this. It's not just about, well, what do you do? Because we ask each other that a lot in a professional capacity. What do you do? It's not what you do, it's who you are. And who do you want to be? And can what you learn today help you accomplish your goal and your mission of who you want to be? So who do you want to be? And I think for you to decide who you want to be, you have to start asking yourself and being very honest with yourself about who you truly are right now. And does that line up with where you think you're going? Okay, this is big existential stuff at 9-something in the morning, all right? But I believe that the reason that you get to a place of success and fulfillment in your life is when you start to just get serious and start asking yourself, am I doing something that is off my mission, right? So I've decided Future Commerce on mission, Mage Talk on mission. It's not because I want to be a podcaster, but it's because I want to have a platform of influence to help other people be successful in their life. Because nobody arrived in this room on their own. Anyone ever hear the saying that to make a cappuccino, you must first invent the whole universe, right? If you go back far enough, there is only one original inception event, right? You go back, you can keep going back far enough to say that we are really the product and the result, that we stand on each other's shoulders. None of us arrived here together. So what I've found is that community sustains me. For me to be successful in weight loss and to keep it and to keep my weight in check, and for me to continue to run, I have to find other people that run and run with them. And for me to be a successful developer, I have to find other developers who are better than me, who spur me on and who challenge me to be better. Are you with me? So you want to live life on purpose, and we need community around us to keep us in check. And to do that, we stand on each other's shoulders. So I'm going to wrap up here. I want to challenge us today for two things. All right? And this is hard. This is not easy, and you do it daily. I want you to start saying no. I want you to start saying now. Someone asked me, how did you lose 153 pounds? Actually, many people have asked me, how did you lose 153 pounds? And I said, I didn't wait for tomorrow. I started right now. So the way that you start a journey of 1,000 steps is with the first. You can't wait to be who you want to be tomorrow. You have to start today. So, what is it that is in your life that's not on mission? Try to identify that and try to carve that out and make more time for the things that are on mission, to become an essentialist, to say that I have a focus and a purpose for my life. And how can I accomplish that? When do I start? I start now. So one way I've done that is by changing the way that I answer this question. Because I think it comes down to, in the simplest things, we have to start somewhere, right? And it's really hard for me to just wake up one day and say, I am now this person. So we start with the simple things, and the simplest thing that I could do is to stop personifying myself in a way that I didn't really identify with. So when someone says, well, what do you do? I used to say, I'm a developer. Anybody else say I'm a developer? Anybody else say I'm an engineer? I stopped saying that because I'll be honest with you, while I love writing code and while I love participating in the Magento community, that phrase doesn't really embody everything I want to be. So to be honest with myself, I have to say something different. So I've started answering this question a little differently. And so that's the way it starts with me. So I start there. And then that reinforces all the other decisions that I'm making. And I would encourage you, this is a challenge for you, because none of us got here into this room on our own. We are all standing on the shoulders of Magento masters before us, and we're standing on the shoulders of people even in the UK community who have greatly influenced me. People like Alistair Stead, who wrote something called Mage Tool, and Mage Tool was something that I used early on in Magento 1 to help me create site functionality faster. He didn't make that on his own. That was a fork of Zend Tool, and that wasn't made on its own. Someone created PHP, and before that, someone created C, and someone before that. Everyone is in this room because of somebody else. We stand on each other's shoulders, and so a challenge to you today would be, what can we do to allow the next generation to have a better experience in our community? How can we make our ceiling someone else's floor? How can we help raise them up so that they're more successful than we ever could have dreamed that we could be? And for me, it starts with answering the question, what do you do? So from now on, I'm Phillip, and I write code. Thank you.